Oi family! Good morning and welcome to another episode of Let's Catch Up with Sherani. We're here today with my celebrity friend, family, and expert, Miss Avice Ingus.
Oi family!
Avice, welcome back to our home.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. Now, so Avice, you were here for a previous show, right?
Yes.
And we were speaking about why it's important to give your life to God in such a traumatic time. But during this week, we were talking, which is what inspired this new show. And we want to talk about protecting your children. Now, for those of you who don't know, Avice is certified with a master's degree in child protection, and she is a social worker. Is that correct?
Degree in social, but master's in counseling, but certainly I'm focusing right now on child protection.
Right, a master's in counseling is absolutely what you would need to be in such a field, because after trauma, counseling is absolutely necessary.
Certainly it is.
Yes. Okay, so Avice, so we had experiences that we shared this week.
Oh,
we didn't
yes.
even know, and I'm gonna speak about mine. Avice, you'll speak about yours, and then we will go into the meat of the matter, where Avice, with her expertise, can assist us, all of us, in what steps rather that we can take to protect our children. I know my friends would laugh when I say this, but I always say that I do believe the children are the future. I say that to all my girlfriends and they laugh.
Yes.
But the children are the future and we are the ones to protect them. So my experience, I was telling Avice earlier this week, I was driving down to the south of the island and I saw a young girl. She couldn't be more than 11 in a uniform, a school uniform, and she was standing in a very bushy area. And that unlocked a memory that I hadn't thought about in probably 20 years.
Yes.
When I was a child, about maybe 8 years old, well, growing up, my grandmother had a big lemongrass tree in the front of our yard. We had a beautiful garden, and a part of that garden, we had a lemongrass tree. Now, everybody from the community would come every morning. A lot of people would come and just call my grandmother, and they would be calling to get pieces of the lemongrass. Now, of course, you know, the children, we had to do the work. My grandmother would never come out. She would always send me, Sherani, go and give whomever some lemongrass. Now, I remember them, the blades cutting my hands. I would just grab a handful with my little hands and just pulse them and give it to whomever came.
Right.
And that's what we had for our breakfast. We had lemongrass tea with our sandwich at mornings. There was this particular person, this guy who would come every morning. I don't know his name, but I can see his face like it was yesterday.
Wow.
And he came every day. So I knew him. Because he's a person that comes to Lemongrass. He lives in the community. So I went to an all-girls school that was maybe 1.5 miles away, and I walked there every day. To walk there, I would have to walk through what we called at that time Warner Park. That's the stadium now where they have all the big sporting events, but it was called Warner Park, and it had very, very, very high grass. Now, Avice, I kid you not, for 20 years I didn't remember this. For 20-something years I didn't remember this. And this is why when you hear children, or adults rather, would say, oh, this happened to me when I was a child, and people saying, oh, you're lying because how come you didn't say anything until now? Avice, I have not remembered this until last week when I was going to the south. So this particular guy who was coming for the lemongrass every morning, I'm walking through the park, Warner Park, and he is in the bush.
In the bushes.
Yes. He's in the bushes, and he's, what in Kittitian language we say, he's stooping down.
Right.
And I remember, so I'm walking alone.
Yeah, walking jolly.
Jolly, because anybody who knows me, my personality is the same all the time. So I'm going to school, and he's saying, psst, 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 Sherani, because he knows me. He knew me. I couldn't be more than 8 years old. And so I looked and I saw him, and I remember I stood at attention.
Yes.
And he said, come. Avice, I don't know why I did this, because I knew him. But I just knew that him being there hiding, it was wrong, because why are you hiding to call me? And I ran.
Call you in the open.
I ran to school. It would have been another probably 5 minutes to get to the school. I ran all the way. It's good to keep fit. So I ran all the
Yes.
way, and then I went to school, and in the afternoon I told my grandmother about it, who raised me. Now, I remember her saying, she was arguing in the house saying blah, 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 and she was going to tell my father. Avice, that is where the story ends for me. I don't remember anything what happened after my grandmother was fussing and saying she's going to tell my dad, because my dad is a police officer. On a previous show, I interviewed a police officer who does self-defense and all that. My dad does all that as well.
Yes.
So my grandmother was saying, I'm going to tell your father, and blah, blah. This gentleman never came back to the house for the lemongrass. So he didn't want the lemongrass. He had a plan all along to really destroy a child. And I give God thanks for my safety. You had an experience this week where you called me, you were
Out of it.
You were out of it. Tell us about
Out
that
of it.
experience.
Yes, my son, well, he goes to school. I won't mention the school's name, but both of them are in the same school.
Your son and daughter.
And son and daughter.
My godchildren, yes.
So I'm at work and I'm getting a call from him because he has a mobile, a very simple mobile, nothing fancy. So he's calling me and he's saying, Mommy, code orange, code orange. So I'm like,
Code orange?
Yes, code
You
orange.
have codes within the
We
family?
have codes within the family, especially when it comes to the children, to protect them. So we start from a code green. A code green would be a happy day, good things happening. You know, I pass my exams, really. And a code red is danger, something horrible. So when I heard code orange, I'm like, I froze and I'm like, what is it? What is it? My boy, what's going on? Mommy, I just saw Anna leaving the school with a lady and a child. My goodness, I froze. I'm like, okay, just go and get her. Turn off the phone, go and get her. I will call everybody I need to call. So what happened? He went after her, got her and brought her back to the school. But I froze for a while. I froze because with all what's going on now, they are abducting little girls.
They are abducting children.
You know,
please keep this in mind with your children. Yes. Children are going missing every day, right?
So I'm like, all of what we have put in place, we spoke to her, you know, you shouldn't go out of the school compound under any circumstances. Don't leave, wait there. The only persons that are allowed to take you, mommy, daddy, uncle, granddad, and one other person that has permission.
Right.
And if mommy and daddy cannot collect them, then I will call the teacher and let the teacher know specifically who is collecting them. So I really froze, and it just reminded me it's so important as parents for us to put safeguarding measures in place for our children.
Yes, absolutely.
And one of the ways we can do so is organizing the codes. Every family, you can have your code. Your codes don't have to be colors. It could be anything.
It could be words.
It could be words.
It could be words.
It could be a clap, something. But all the children should know what the codes are. And from time to time, it is important for you to review the codes.
Yes.
Because you do not want, and you made a very important point. The person who tried to abduct you was a familiar person. And that is how it is always done. There's something called grooming. The pedophiles, they are experts at grooming. They will groom your children. They are familiar people within the family setting.
Uncles.
They are the uncles. They are the stepfathers. They are the stepmothers. They are the cousins.
Family friends.
Familiar. So that it will be easy to destroy. And it's really destroying the children.
Let me tell you something, Avice, and let me say this to our family. My son is 19 now, but even as a child, I never trusted my child with anybody. You and I could have been best of friends. I trusted his daddy, his auntie Didi, and that little circle of his auntie Cheryl, that little circle of family members. I never trusted anybody with my child. So much so one day I couldn't find anybody to keep him within that circle that I trusted. I took him to work and hid him in the bathroom. And you know, the girls, girls told on me, I got written up on my job. But that is how serious it was for me. And even a day like today, my son and I, we're very security conscious. I tell him certain things because you cannot trust anyone. And these children, we hear the stories of the incest, of the rapes, of all these. And we are to speak to the children so that they can be aware when dangerous things are happening, and also open relationships so they can tell you.
And which is my next point. Communication is so important. As parents, we need to, and persons in caregivers for children, we need to develop a very good rapport with our children.
Absolutely.
So that they will feel free. I like when you said you spoke to your grandmom.
Yes.
And she listened. How many times do we listen to our children? Do we listen to them? We must always take their story as what is happening. And we can always investigate later, whether we need the help of the police or whether we need the help of the Division of Human Services.
Absolutely.
We can always do that later, but give them their time. They come home with a story, sit, as busy and tired as you are, get a cup of coffee, sit down or whatever gets you alive, and listen to your children. Listen to what they're saying. There are some parents, sad to say, in our beautiful island who will choose their man over their girl child or their boy child. And I mean, this is something I get every day. They will tell the child, I will choose my man over you, and they will not listen to the children. So thank God your grandmother listened to you, and they took action. I'm sure they took action. That's why the bugger never came back to collect lemongrass.
My heart is soft. My heart is breaking as you're saying that parents would put a spouse or even a husband
they will.
Or a wife, because there's female pedophiles.
Yes, they are.
Over the children. I am I was an overprotective mother. I'm overprotective of any children who comes into my care, right? Because obviously what I experience, and it's just traumatic. And also you were talking about the communication aspect of it. We also want to touch on behavioral patterns. Sometimes you will see a child who is a butterfly, such as moi, who would go down and just become quiet.
Yes.
And you gotta really observe and say, why is the shift in attitude and change? Sometimes the kids would start lashing out. They're angry.
That's right.
Like, what's the matter?
Many times, when you investigate and or you would find out that those children have been abused, and they either go in a shell, like they withdraw, or they become very angry because they're dealing with all of this hurt, this physical hurt, this sexual hurt, and so on. And we need to observe behavioral changes and do the necessary reporting. Most schools all have counselors. The secondary schools, the district counselors that work in the primary schools. There is social services, there's the police, there's probation, there's so many places where we can, make those necessary reports. And also in St. Lucia, we have something called mandatory reporting, that if you see a child is being abused, you have evidence that the child is being abused and you do not report, you can be fined. You can be fined a couple of thousands of dollars. So it is very important to make a report in those cases.
You know something, my sister? Unfortunately, we live in an age where everybody wants to mind their own business.
Yes.
We put all of our business on social media, but when we see people getting harmed, we want to mind our own business. I think that the children need us to stand up for them and to represent them. I think they deserve that. Sex comes with major responsibility, even for us as adults. Emotional, mental, physical. Yes. Can you imagine the impact that would have on a child whose body, whose mind is not ready for that type of, and I'm going to refer to it as trauma, because that's what it is for a child, as trauma. So I think that we really need to just emphasize on these points to our family. Now, what about... Because a lot of times you're speaking about reporting, but a lot of times when it's reported, the child is afraid because the child knows I still have to go back in there with that monster. Because let's face it, they're not removed instantaneously. There's always some sort of wait and investigation, and also there's a lot of people saying the child is lying, especially if it's a what we like to call a troubled teen, and I hate that terminology, a troubled teen, or, a child that normally fabricates stories. They would say, oh, the child is lying. Oh, she always making up stories. Oh, look how she'd be dressing. Oh, she'd be playing out with a man, and now she's saying that. Or, things like that. Or, that woman is a nice Christian woman. She would never do that to a child. You cannot trust anybody in life. That is how I see it, And you got to communicate with these children. Tell them, come and tell me no matter what.
Yes.
There's no joke. There's no joke in this segment. I remember, it's I tell it as a funny story now, but it's not even funny. I remember years ago, my son was little. He was about 5 or 6. I was watching the Oprah Winfrey show. And she brought on some children who were, I would call it raped by their parents.
Yes, unfortunately.
And I remember that show angered me so much. It tore up my heart. I was so upset, I was so hurt. I called my son, I think he was in his bedroom. I said, LJ, come here. Like that, like very aggressive. And if anybody who knows my son is he's not my personality. He's low-key, calm, collected.
Yes.
I said, I called him, I said, who touched your penis? Tell me who touched your penis right now. And he said, literally, the little kid, he did this. Mommy, no one touched my penis. And I said, oh, okay. And I remember his father said, you're stressing out the child. Stop it. But I got so emotional from the show. I felt like it was my duty, even though I was talking to my child from tiny.
Yes.
My child started speaking early because his mother's a talker. So I was speaking to my child from young. So we had conversations, open conversations about every and anything. But still, when I watched that show, I got angry. And that is what parents need to do. My sister, they need to get angry.
Yes.
They need to get angry. They need to fight for these children. They're not.
Somebody has to advocate for them, even now, because everything is getting so much difficult. And, it's our responsibility to protect our children. Not only ours, biological, but the children of the nation. This is our responsibility, and everybody has an important part to play. So as you said, nowadays everybody wants to stay in their corner. You see something, no, you could call any of the places you can, and just call anonymously. You do not have to say your name. You see something that is not looking right, make a report.
Let me tell you something. When I was working at the resort across the street, one day I was going to work, and it was just torrential rains. It was raining cats and dogs. And I remember when I drove up through there was a little girl. The rain was beating on that child. She had no umbrella, just a little backpack and a bag, a little lunch bag. I stopped because I'm a mother.
Yes.
I had already dropped my own child off to school. And I said, boy, this little child. So I stopped the car and I opened the door. I said, come, honey. And the child, the little girl, she just came in and sat in the car. Right away, I went into confusion. No, obviously, I'm a loving, caring mother. Would never do this to a child. But it caused confusion because I'm like, why is she okay to come in my car? Her mother should have told her, do not ever go in anybody's car, no matter the situation.
Exactly.
Anyway, I said, where are you going, honey? She said she's going to Dimpole, the school down in Union Terrace. No, that's way out from where I am, and in morning traffic, in traffic with rain. And I carried her all the way to the school.
Wow.
I parked the car on the opposite side. I held her hand. I walked in. I asked her what class she was in, and I released her to her teacher. I said, I found this child in the rain. I just wanted to make sure that I bring her to the school. Because then again, you don't know, I'm a policeman's child. You don't know who saw the child jump in your car. And then if God forbid someone else did something to the child after I released the child, they're going to say, she went into the car with Sherani. So I took her to another adult. I handed her over. And then as I'm driving away, I felt good, like, okay, the child is safe. She's there. But it could have been anybody.
It could have been anybody. It could have been a pedophile. And
tell your children, stop taking rides. When I'm coming up the hill, sometimes I see the kids and the hill is hard coming up to my home, and I want to pick them up, but I don't, because they should never be okay with just getting in a stranger's car.
Yes, it's so important to have that talk with them. Again, communication. That talk needs to be there. These are the people. These are safeguarding issues. These are the people you should go home with X, Y, Z. Do not leave the school with anyone and go out there. So these are some of the measures we can put in place. And in a day like today of technology, I think as long as the children are old enough, they can get a simple device.
Yes.
Because if my son didn't have that device, then he would not immediately
give the children a
be
phone.
able to call me and tell me this is what's going on. And there's so many apps. There are so many apps
that you can track.
So you can track them and know what's going on with them and ensure that they're not getting into the wrong sites and so on. It is our responsibility.
It's our responsibility,
as parents,
yes.
as neighbors, to safeguard our children. That is because, as you said, they are the future.
Yes.
They are our future.
They are our future.
Important.
Yeah, and in closing, I want to also say that stop saying, okay, let me go back. A minute ago I said, give the children a phone. I don't mean to waste time and go on YouTube and do this, but give them maybe what you all call a trono.
A trono, a pill, just
so they can reach their parents.
And make sure it has credit on it.
And make sure it has credit.
$5 top up every 2 weeks and so on.
Yes.
You know?
And I wanted to go back and say that I'm not asking you to just go and buy an expensive phone.
No.
But then in closing, I want to say, stop saying that when I was young, I used to, and when I was young. This is a new life, a new age, and these children, they're different. They don't think like us, they don't talk like us. You understand? So...
Generation, what generation are we on, sir?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Me either.
I must have been in generation A, B, or C. But, and Avice, as we are having this very important conversation, I was thinking about having a child next year, but now that you're telling me this, I don't even think I want to have a child again because I'm so scared.
Sister, you want to have a child? But your eggs freeze up already, that compartment lock, and you want to have a child.
So, my sister, as you're speaking about eggs being fried or frozen, it reminds me of chicken. And I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to our sponsors for today. Kentucky Fried Chicken, who sponsored lunch for all of us today. You know something, my sister? Kentucky, they do the chicken right. All right? So we want to give a big shout out to Kentucky Fried Chicken, all of your lovely staff. Keep doing a good job. We appreciate you. And whenever it's too exhausting to come home and cook, Kentucky is always there for us. So thank you, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Thank you.
So family, thank you again for joining us on another episode of Let's Catch Up with Sherani. We'll see you again soon.